All right. Welcome to Prep Boyz Podcast. This here is episode number 3.
Wow, that flew by.
We're moving along, man. We're moving along. Today we're going to talk OA scaling via some time savings opportunities. We're going to try to get a little bit more narrow as we go on with the pod, get specific. That way we're really giving you topics and info that's going to help out. I am your humble host, Mr. BS himself, Bright Shadow, and this is my guy, OJ.
What's going on, everybody?
Nice to be with you, bro.
Yeah, good to see you again. Happy Friday.
Same to you. To you. We're still only 2/3 of Prep Boyz here. We got Jet Lag Jay still snoozing.
Well, he's always on the road or in the air, so it's tough.
All right, so we're gonna hop right into it here. Again, we got a few topics to get into. We're talking OA scaling via time savings, and the first sort of topic I wanted to get into was repricing tools.
Yeah.
Before we really get into that, though, can you tell me your basic repricing strategy that you use?
Yeah, so I would say before we even get into the actual repricer, kind of first you have to understand, hey, is a repricer for me? Yeah. Because that's kind of the first step in the process. And the good thing is with all these repricers, or with 90% of them, you'll be able to at least have a free trial, which you can kind of roll in, 14 days and then do the next one 7 days to kind of see what you would like best. But firstly, you want to make sure, hey, is a repricer right for me at this stage? So if you're a seller and you may be doing this as a part-time job, but you only have, let's say, 5 ASINs that you're selling, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go out and spend $90-$100 a month on a repricer when you can simply just kind of manually reprice those 5 SKUs or 5 ASINs on your own.
Yep.
So you kind of have to find that threshold where it becomes a little bit too tedious to reprice, because like I mentioned, you could be at work, you could be doing other things, or if you kind of notice like, hey, these items aren't moving as fast as let's say Keepa would indicate. So that would mean folks like myself or yourself, our reprices are working much faster than the person who's doing it manually.
Yep.
So that's kind of the first step. I would recommend like a threshold of maybe 20-25 ASINs before you even start thinking about a repricer, because then it becomes a bit too much to manage.
And that makes perfect sense. And I'm not using a repricer exactly for that reason. Yeah. I just don't have enough ASINs to have it worth my while.
Yep.
So I do it manually. When you were doing it manually, though, what was like your basic strategy? Sometimes you'll have sellers who are in there cutting the price in half.
Yeah.
How do you react to something like that? Or like you said, if something isn't maybe moving, what was your like baseline strategy for, okay, this is how I'm gonna handle this item?
So if you buy any item, and I think we might have mentioned this during our first podcast, data is key. I myself, I have a data job on the side from helping out here at the Prep Center, but analyzing the data and really know what you have before you purchase the item is going to be the first kind of major hurdle before you buy. So with that being said, if something is historically selling for $25, and the next thing you know, you look and there's a seller on there selling it for $12.50, you're kind of saying, hey, well, there's 2 questions. How is this guy selling this thing for $12.50? Could it have potentially been his buy cost, which he made a mistake and entered as his sale cost? Mm-hmm. Or number 2, and this is kind of where critical thinking comes in as a reseller, this guy must have got this product for 50% cheaper than I did. How could I do that?
Yeah.
So those are kind of that's how you want to think, because obviously no one wants to come in here on Amazon as a business and sell at a loss. That's no one's goal. Facts. I mean, we're all in it to make profit. We're all in it to succeed, build a business. So those are kind of the 2 things you want to look at. With that being said, if I notice there's an undercutter or 2 on there, I'm not going to sit there and race to the bottom with these guys. Everyone's situation is different. They could potentially be liquidating for other purposes.
Yep.
But I like to, kind of keep my prices based on historical data. So if historically, like I mentioned, it's selling at 25, however, there's a short dip for the next couple of weeks, I'm kind of going to keep my price right around the historical, where it points to historically.
That makes sense. And sometimes, like you said, there could be a multitude of reasons of why people are undercutting.
Yeah.
But sometimes, they're just trying to liquidate. They're trying to get rid of product. It could be that it's not moving as quickly as they want, and so they're going to sell at cost and just rinse the product and then move on to something else. So
yeah, that's exactly right.
Yep. All right. So I know present day you're dealing with a ton of ASINs.
Yeah.
So do you currently have a repricing tool?
Yeah, so I think it did take me a while to adopt a repricer. I think it took me longer than what I kind of just recommended, and that's why we're here, kind of putting this information out so you don't make some of the mistakes or you're not at a disadvantage, kind of how we were in the beginning. But right now, yes, I do utilize Aura. Been utilizing Aura for a couple of years now, and it's they've recently pushed out some new updates and some new UI configuration, which I'm kind of still trying to work through. I think at this point I kind of prefer the legacy version of Aura.
Okay.
But with that being said, it's I've had no errors. I've had no prices where I post at $90 and next thing you know I get sales at 70. So that's shout out to Aura for that. It's a really good system. I think it runs about $90 a month. So kind of take that how you will. But I could confidently say any repricer, if you're spending $90 a month on a repricer, that's going to make you $20,000 in revenue. Obviously, it's worth it.
Yep.
Transparently, with the new UI that I just mentioned for Aura, I've given Be Cool a shot. I know that there's tons of folks out there who utilize Be Cool, BQOOL. I believe it's around $7 more per month than Aura. But they do have some pretty good pricing strategies already built in there to help you optimize either revenue, ROI, or profit. So that's another one to look at. And then there's before you're picking a repricer, you want to look at the thresholds in those repricers, because some of them would have tiered pricing. So a beginner can hop in and utilize Aura just fine. But some of them would have, hey, you can only input a maximum 200 ASINs. That we would reprice for you. So you kind of want to look at that, make sure it fits in with your growth strategy as a business, and then take it from there. But personally, I work with Be Cool and Aura, and I could recommend those.
Okay. So those are two. When you were sort of going through your analysis to choose one, what was it that made you stick with Aura or go with Aura? So
in this business, and again, I think we spoke about this previously, it's all about relationships. So with that being said, I know Dylan, who who's the founder of Aura. He's actually really involved in the resale community. He's actually in one of our groups, the Buy Box, and he communicates and connects in there. And so with that being said, our leadership in the Buy Box, they worked with him, they know him. We ended up getting a promo code, so I wanted to test that out first. Okay. And like I mentioned, I've been using that for 2 years. Just wanted to kind of look at something different as of late, but that's kind of how we started with Aura.
That makes sense. Yeah. So you said Aura. Can you list off just a couple other options for the people out there?
Yeah, I mean maybe like EVA. You could utilize EVA. There's a couple more that are much more expensive, but I would say looking at top 3, those would probably be my top 3 suggestions. You probably don't need to look further than those 3 unless you feel like those aren't going to meet your needs somehow. But I feel like, for the average seller or even above average seller, those 3 tools should be able to kind of fit your repricing strategy.
Okay. Makes sense. And again, you're not making any money off promoting these brands.
Oh, not
so
yet.
This is just free game.
Sure.
That's all. Okay, so that's repricing, and that's one avenue to sort of save time, right? That was the key, saving time and giving you a chance to spend your time sourcing or doing other things that are important to your business. along those lines, let's get into choosing a prep center. Of course, we're running Prep Boyz here, but there's a ton of prep centers out there.
Yeah.
Another great way for you to really save time. Can you talk first and foremost on how much time it was actually taking you to do your prepping, both at the beginning and then at your peak?
Yeah. Those are, two big questions, and I know we can talk to those for hours. I mean, firstly, I could speak to kind of, prep time personally and, without utilizing a prep center. And the thing is, you have to take into account not just the prepping and then the shipping off to Amazon, but not only, you kind of have to look at the receiving and then perhaps transporting the goods or products from your residence to maybe your office or your storage unit, wherever you do your prep. So all those take time that are, literally outside of prepping the actual inventory.
Yep.
So I would say it widely depends. If you're prepping something like, a box of, let's say, granola bars, a sealed box, all it requires is a slap on a label. Of course, that would take a lot less time than, prepping, let's say, a bundle of items or a Funko Pop in particular. But I would say, confidently, less than a minute or so on average is how long it should take to prep an item. Of course, again, that greatly depends. But at my peak, doing 1,000 units a month, that's almost, I'm no mathematician, but that's almost a full day of prep.
Quick math.
That you kind of save on a monthly basis if you were kind of to sublet that out or outsource that and have a prep center work on your behalf. So yeah, no question, it's a huge time saver. But not only time, convenience, and then not having to worry about, your other folks living in your residence having to step through boxes or your neighbors wondering what's going on here.
A whole living room full of boxes.
Right. You've got your entire yard full of Amazon boxes or Walmart boxes, and the neighbors, it doesn't really make neighbors happy.
Yeah. And look, there's nothing wrong with that, especially in the beginning. I respect the grind.
Yeah.
You see that on social media all the time. People posting, their living room stacked up with their work. So respect if you're out there grinding, but at some point, it reaches like, oh, okay, this is a little bit much.
Yeah, and so my personal journey, I was doing it at my house. I also do real estate, for those of you who don't know. So I had a smaller real estate office, which I ended up bringing some products from my house to my real estate office. So essentially, essentially my real estate office turned into an Amazon prep center. And then I realized, okay, well, I actually have way too many items here. So I went to the landlord in the office and I was like, hey, man, do you have anything bigger? He's like, well, I mean, aren't you just doing real estate? And I'm like, come take a look at my office. And it's like it's like a Toys R Us or something in there. So, I kind of went with a bigger office at that point. And then eventually I said, hey, well, I think I could utilize a prep center. And that's kind of when you and I connected along with Jason, and we thought that this would be a good business, not only for us, but for to be able to help people as well. But kind of that's kind of my journey, long story short. But back to the kind of prep center question and why get a prep center, what kind of differentiates prep centers. That's, it's a lot of kind of ways you can kind of hit on it. I would probably start off with, location and relationships.
Okay.
So, if you're in Florida, like we are here in South Florida, we've got a lot of relationships with folks that are in South Florida. We work with RA buyers who are able to kind of come in, do some shopping, and then drop their products off here at our warehouse, since we're close by to those guys. So I would say location and relationships is going to be one or two, and then of course cost, which is that's probably the number one determining factor.
Of course.
But you do, what I've noticed, and I'm sure you've seen the same thing, kind of speaking with customers and onboarding different folks, is that sometimes you have to be a little bit leery or wary of those low-priced prep centers who kind of promise you one thing,
Man.
And next thing you know, I mean, we have a few onboarding calls a week, and it's just horror stories.
Okay, so you're leading me right into it here. I'm gonna ask the next question. What are some red flags that you should look out for when you're going through that process and looking for a prep center? Yeah,
so I mean, you want to look at, and this is something transparently that we didn't have since we started off, just this year. But you really want to look at reviews for a prep center.
Yep.
Reviews and word of mouth is probably how you want to start. Obviously, Google searches, reaching out to anyone on Twitter or your social media or Discords. But I would kind of look at that because, like I mentioned, like Jesse was alluding to, scams, not being transparent. As a seller, trusting someone with your inventory, obviously you want things to kind of go off without a hitch.
Yep.
Yes, mistakes may happen from time to time. But myself being in customer service pretty much my entire life, I know that customer service is key, and communication is number one. So that's kind of what we pride ourselves here on, is just kind of making sure that we're organized. The customer knows what we have. The customer knows what's being sent out. Any notes, back and forth are being communicated properly and effectively, to ensure that Amazon is getting those items that they, that the sellers paid for,
Yep.
And are paying us for our service. On time, without error.
And look, before we opened, we were going around checking out some of our rivals, trying to get a feel for their process. And to your point, a couple of the big things, they're hard to contact.
Yeah,
man, if you're hard to contact up front, and I'm not even sending you products yet, to me that's sort of a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is, if they're not allowing you to do a site visit,
yeah,
we've had that request a couple times, and look, open the doors up, come check us out. Like, I guess I don't understand why some folks would be a bit more offish, and to me that's a red flag.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know that some centers might have kind of protocol and processes that they don't want others to see. But at the end of the day, if you want to do business with someone and you could be doing big businesses, could be, multi-$1,000s a month. And you just want to, do a simple quick tour of the facility or maybe a simple phone call before you sign on. And I know during our experiences here in South Florida, at least, it was a huge challenge.
It was.
And, so that's why we, the onboarding process, which, Jetlag Jason, that's kind of his baby, and he's really taken that by the horns and really walks everyone through the process. We've got videos dedicated to our customers, so that way, it really leaves no stone unturned.
Yep.
And we try to make the process as easy as you can. So, just kind of going back to the question, I would say location, relationships, obviously taxes is huge. I know that. We get that a lot, so we kind of found a way to at least help on the invoicing side of things.
Yep.
Here at the Prep Boyz in particular. But then, transparency and customer service. You cannot, realize the importance of that until you actually have an issue. Maybe you need to stop a shipment from going out because you had the ASIN incorrect on your sheet. Maybe the prices dropped so much that you want to go ahead and FBM it instead of FBA it. So being able to communicate with your prep center is going to be key. And that's, again, something that you would only be able to see in the reviews, word of mouth, or literally by connecting with the prep center.
Yep. And we have daily communication with customers.
Yeah.
It's mandatory, and most places will have a type of communication that they might want to use, whether that's phone call or email only.
Yep.
I know we do sort of a mixture of both depending on the customer and situation, but that communication is clutch.
Yeah.
Okay, so a question that we get all the time, and it's an important one. How can sellers calm their nerves a bit when they're sending in products to a prep center and they're worried about their listings getting stolen by either other people working there or the owners, or just how do they protect it overall?
Yeah, so that's something that I really can't speak to other prep centers. I can kind of only speak to the way we do it, and us being transparent as we are. In the onboarding process, just to kind of alleviate any concerns with our prospects or customers, we're happy to provide our store names.
Straight up.
100%. I know that there's a lot of prep centers who are Amazon sellers just like us, and that's not something that they're willing to offer. Not only because it may have address information and things like that, but then you can also do a little bit of storefront stalking and get an idea of what that seller's or prep center owner is selling.
And that's really what they're worried about.
Exactly.
But if you're being transparent on both sides, to me it alleviates some of that
Yeah, no question. And I know that, it is kind of nerve wracking for sure. You're sending, hundreds or thousands of dollars a month of merchandise. You got a killer listing that there's not much competition on. And next thing you know, you've got, hey, this seller, isn't that where I'm sending my stuff to the prep center? Next thing you know, he's on the listing. So it's really something that, here at Prep Boyz, it's not something that will happen. It's not something that, that we ever would do.
Yep.
And we, communicate that transparently during the onboarding process.
Have you ever heard of any scams related to prep centers that you could chalk up, tell people to watch out for?
So, I really wouldn't say that many scams.
Maybe that's a harsh word.
Yeah, I really wouldn't say scams. Maybe false advertising or a little bit of bait and switch action.
Yep.
Where, next thing you know, you see the price advertised as 60 cents per unit. And then, hey, I just sent 2 units, so I expected a $1.20 invoice, but then they charge you 50 cents for 12 inches of tape, 30 cents for the sticker. Yep. And before you know it, you paid $6.
Yeah.
And so, and that goes back to, again, here at the Prep Boyz with our transparent pricing. There's, everything is kind of laid out. And again, that's spoken to in the onboarding process. We are here literally to help people grow. We're not trying to become millionaires off the business or anything like that. It's just really kind of getting our arms around people and just helping as many people as we can. That's kind of why we started this. And that's why we have transparent pricing available on our website, available to speak through the onboarding call as well.
Yep. And listen, maybe I won't call it a scam per se, but we have had customers who say, look, I was using so-and-so prep center and they lost all this merchandise. It just disappeared into the thin air. That's always an unfortunate situation. Of course, you're going to take a big hit financially. Mm-hmm. So one thing I would suggest is when you're using a prep center, send in inventory a bit slowly, give them 100 units. Yeah. 200 units. If you're a large seller, don't just start with 1,000, right? Because pallets, they're gonna ease into it a little bit.
Yeah, I would say that's a good suggestion. And also, during the onboarding call, it's kind of an interview between both of you guys. If it's not a good fit for the prep center, we'll kind of let you know it's not a good fit. On your end, if it's not a good fit for you, you let us know that it's not a good fit, and that's fine.
Yep.
We won't be a match for every single prospect or customer. We understand that. But another thing that you can ask while you're looking at a prep center is, hey, what does your security look like? Do you have a guarded door? Do you have, attack dogs? What do what do you have? And so here at the Prep Boyz, not to get into our security system too much, but we've got warehouse cameras everywhere. So if there are any discrepancies, we can speak to that specific time and date where, let's say a seller got something delivered on, October 30th at 12 p.m. We can look at our cameras and notice that, hey, yes, that shipment was there. Yep. And maybe someone stole it or the delivery guy did a drop and go or something.
Yeah, and that's important because you're matching timestamps, exactly. Right? You can match the timestamp of when it was delivered with the timestamp of the camera.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, that process, like I said, it's an interview both ways. And don't be afraid to ask those questions. And if the prep center is a little bit hesitant to answer those questions, I would be hesitant if I were in your shoes to sign on.
Okay. So we went repricing tools, we went prep centers. So we're scaling up our business here. Yeah. We're eliminating some of the time waste.
And those two are a great start.
Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now let's talk leads for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Of course, doing your own, finding your own leads, it's the name of the game, right? It's a big part, but there are other ways that you can go about it. I guess what percentage, if you could ballpark it, of your leads are direct, where it's you sourcing through the web, or and what percentage are indirect, where you have some other resource or avenue that helps you gain those? Yeah.
So for me personally, when I kind of started off, 4 years ago, selling on Amazon particularly, it was mainly a lot of retail arbitrage. So I was in the stores, which it was fun because this was I wanted to try this full time. I was kind of in between jobs. I did have my real estate office as well, but I was in between actual, W-2 jobs. So I gave it a shot full time. And jumping into retail arbitrage, it was pretty fun. And that way I was able to drum up a good amount of leads, good amount of inventory. But then, I figured I could do this and, sign on full time somewhere else and kind of really elevate and scale my, my salary and my income.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I utilized one of the tools that I utilized was Keepa. And a lot of people don't know this. They just kind of look at Keepa as looking at data and historical data. But you can use Keepa to find products. Right in Keepa, there's a product. Yeah, there's a product finder tool. You can set that up and configure it based on your criteria. And that way, this will really help you not only kind of set alerts for other stores, but this will really help you hone in on your Amazon to Amazon flips. So I made the transition from retail arbitrage. I saw, for instance, what Saul was doing with a couple other people in some groups are doing with Amazon to Amazon, with it being tax-free with your business account, with kind of just the ease of Amazon, Amazon to Amazon flips, it's just very easy.
Yep.
So that's kind of what I did with my business after that. I would probably say 70% was Amazon to Amazon.
Wow.
And being in groups, those Amazon to Amazon leads, yes, they look great. They could be great, but you have to realize 300 other people in the group got that lead.
Yeah.
So unless you're clearing out the entire inventory, you have to expect competition.
Yep.
Competition comes tanking.
Yep.
So then, personally, I made a little bit of an adjustment. Amazon is still a huge part of my business. Maybe 60% now.
Okay.
But I've since transitioned to maybe 2 years ago. Utilizing virtual assistants. So I did the pretty much the sourcing online and manually using some tools like tactical arbitrage is probably the most popular one. To be able to find products. So I used tactical arbitrage, and it was okay. I found a lot of good products on there, but like you said, manually is just typically best.
Okay.
I kind of got a hang of utilizing tools like tactical arbitrage and then Keepa. And then since we're speaking about time savings, my initial thought was, okay, this is taking a lot of time. I'm finding things, but I don't really have a lot of time to do other things that I'd like to do. So I went ahead and outsourced that task. So I found one virtual assistant, virtual employee, ended up training her on, kind of my sourcing ways, on the tools I utilize, providing him or her with the logins for those tools if they didn't have them, and then saying, hey, here's my process. I recorded it. Here's, kind of a Q&A. I want you to replicate this process for me. So now I've got, virtual assistants sending over 120 plus leads on a weekly basis. Not all of them are going to be home runs or slam dunks, but, that really saves me a lot of time on a day-to-day basis. So I would say, you can utilize, like as I mentioned, tools like Keepa, tactical arbitrage, other tools like SellerAmp to really kind of get a picture of what your profitability would look like. And then, once you feel kind of comfortable enough, you can teach someone else the process.
I was going to ask you what your top 3 tools would be.
Yeah.
You sort of already mentioned them.
Yeah.
But say it again for the people who are listening slow out there.
Yes.
What are your top 3 sourcing tools?
Yeah, so I would say Keepa, tactical arbitrage, and then, kind of utilizing SellerAmp to really, hone in on the profitability and the ROI on those particular products. There's tons of others out there. I mean, there's seller tools. There's Jungle Scout for more of the private label sellers. There's a whole host of tools. Buybot is another one that I know is picking up steam. And most recently, I think within maybe the past year or two, I know we spoke to it earlier, Storefront Stalking has become huge. And for those of you that don't know, essentially you can click on a listing, and there's some listings where you're like, this seller is on a lot of listings that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So you can essentially, kind of look at that person's store, and you can really look at their products, and essentially you can find a way to source those same products. Because obviously, if they're selling them, they're probably profitable.
Yep.
So that's kind of another thing to look at. Maybe we can talk about Storefront Stalking on another episode.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so you figured out how to source in a multitude of ways. Now you have all these leads. Can you talk to me a bit about how you validate those leads?
Yeah. So lead validation, especially if you're using a virtual assistant, you really want to take time to go through those leads. Specifically myself, I actually help a couple of groups with leads lists. So I don't want to sit here with egg on my face after someone spends $1,000 on a lead and then it not being a match.
Yep.
So with that being said, utilizing again something like SellerAmp, literally clicking each listing versus each source site and making 100% sure that it's a match. Sometimes you'll have items that the packaging may vary, but they're the same product. You want to look at the ingredients if you're in grocery or something like that, or makeup. You want to look at the ingredients and make sure those line up. So that's as granular as I go. I literally look at ingredients, make sure it's the same unit count or pack count. And the main thing I actually didn't touch on first was making sure that the source site is legit. So you could have, and I came across this yesterday, there were actually a couple, I think one, just to give you guys a heads up on, was Outlet Crayola. There's a huge item going on right now, which is the Crayola Color Wonder packages. I think I was selling those a few months ago, and now they're finally catching on Steam. Outlet Crayola, I'm like, wow, I can go on this website and get this product for almost as cheap as Walmart was selling it. However, I look at OA Buddy, which is a tool that you guys can utilize to kind of check the legitimacy of a site. That's OA Buddy. You can also look at something like Trustpilot. So before you look at any leads, I would definitely verify the actual source, and then from there you can kind of look at the leads as granular as you need to determine that it's a match on Amazon.
Now, some people might say, "Oh, well, why is the source necessarily that important?" Mm-hmm. I have ways I can get ungated without the proper source. So what's preventing me from just taking the cheapest I can get and throwing it on there?
And it's funny you mentioned that. Well, maybe funny and not funny to some of the viewers watching who have been kind of seeing a wave of what's called the Section 3 notices going out. And I think, this kind of wave and seeing some, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's kind of seeing some sellers go through the enormous amount of work that it takes to verify this process with Amazon. So if you're buying from sources that appear to be illegitimate, they don't have proper receipts or invoicing that they could provide to you, I would, at this time, maybe last year, I would say, man, it's a great product, risk it.
Yep.
Right now, as we sit here today, I would probably say don't buy it. Because, not only will you have to prove your sources, you'd have to kind of go back and really understand how they got their product. If you're using a prep center, you have to, make sure they have their invoices that they're keeping on your behalf.
Paperwork trail gets crazy.
Yeah,
it's a nightmare.
And if the trail's not legit, there's a huge chance that not only could you lose those items that are potentially still in your inventory that Amazon has called out, but they'll go ahead and destroy those items that you paid for, and you could be out of your disbursements for who knows how long, which obviously will really hinder your business. So I would say really validating a source, especially today, is probably bigger than ever. And there are some sites that may not appear legit because they're not a huge name. But there's tons of sites out there that you can make a lot of money on that do have proper invoices, proper receipts, proper storefronts, and are actually legitimate. So I'd really spend the extra time going and verifying that for sure.
All right. So you talked about some of the tools you're using to get so many leads and obviously you're creating leads lists for folks out there. I guess to get personal first, is there any categories that you absolutely love and you're all over for your own business, not necessarily for the leads list? And then are there any categories you're like, nah, I'm not going to touch that?
So I would say when I first started on Amazon, and I know Christian, if you're watching this one day, you could kind of speak to it too. A huge Nike seller. That's all he sold was Nike. I think
Jetlag was on Nike for a while too.
Right. Yeah. And you can make a boatload of money doing Nike. But next thing you know, you kind of broaden your horizons. You jump into grocery, and it opens up a million more ASINs and a potential for a boatload of money. Me personally, I love clothing and shoes. Yes, the return rates are high. no question about it, probably some of the highest that there are, probably outside of beauty. But the velocity of clothing and shoes is huge, and I love seeing it. When I first started, I was a little bit hesitant. As I mentioned, I started off in RA, so it's a little bit awkward going in and scanning women's bathing suits at Marshalls, as a guy by yourself with no lady next to you. But I would say if you're really looking to scale, I would say no product or categories off limits.
Okay.
If this is your business and you want it to grow, you have to kind of keep an open mind. If a particular item, if a 12-pack of condoms, for instance, are selling like hotcakes, see where you can source those items and just sell them. That's kind of how I would look at it today.
Okay. You're doing all these lead lists. Can you tell me where the folks can find both the free leads list that you offer as well as the paid leads list?
Yeah, so for the free leads, we offer those to people who are interested in signing up with the Prep Boyz. So you can go to theprepboyz.com, Prep Boyz with a Z, of course. And then we do have our Twitter page, which is kind of affiliated with the buy box. You can go ahead on Twitter, go to the buy box, and they'll be able to kind of point you into the public leads. Or you can go ahead and join the buy box server, which is where you'll see the paid leads as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, folks. That's gonna do it for today. I think we packed in a lot of topics.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Please like and follow. Please go to the website, prepboyz.com, theprepboyz.com. Let me get that.
Boyz, yeah.
Check us out. We're here to help. We're here to give free game. Thanks again.
Yeah, no problem.
My guy, always dropping gems.
Yeah, hopefully that provided some value. I can tell you that I wish I kind of adopted, not only the Prep Center, but the VA a bit earlier in the process. No question about it. But, be sure to do things at your own pace and when you're ready. And make sure you're an expert or you've mastered the process before you kind of outsource it. So that's what I would like to lead with.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, guys.